and welcome to Dear Katie, the podcast that amplifies courageous voices and real stories of resilience, healing, and hope after trauma. Inspired by the many letters Katie has received over the last 20 years, each week she interviews survivors, healers, and experts to honor their stories and explore the many paths to healing and hope. Before we begin, please know, many episodes of Dear Katie cover sensitive topics related to sexual violence, trauma, and recovery. Listen with care and take the space you need to take care of yourself. Your well-being is what matters most. Now, let's join Katie and today's guest for a conversation that matters.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. This is Katie Koestner. And as I always like to say, each and every one of our episodes provides another opportunity for each of us to think about our healing journeys, if we're supporting someone else in their journey, what we might bring to them from our conversations today. And if you need to take a break at any time, push pause, get some fresh air. In this case, it's snowing. You can make some snowballs outside, but whatever works for you. And I'm super excited about, as I always am, about our guest. So Tammy Valicenti is an international psychotherapist and speaker. Her expertise in trauma recovery has, I think she's done this for maybe 30 years?
Around 30, yes.
Around 30 years. She has achieved remarkable success in co-transforming various forms of trauma and has developed Transformation Soulution, a cutting-edge synthesis of eye movement desensitization. Oh no, I'll let you say that word. Desensitization.
You did it.
Yeah, got it. And reprocessing therapy, which is, I guess I could have just said EDMR.
Yes.
But internal family systems and other evidence-based therapies. Mm-hmm. This approach accomplishes in weeks or months what traditional psychotherapy has usually taken years to accomplish. Tammy practices modalities she has benefited from and invites all of us to do the same. So now that I can pronounce that word, so Tammy, tell us more, like, where are you from and where did you go to school and how did you start your life?
I'm from the Boston area. I grew up in Needham, Massachusetts. I went to undergraduate at UMass, got my psychology degree there. And it wasn't something like, oh, I'm looking for a job and I really want to be in this field. I was called to this from a very young age. I wanted to be a child psychologist. But really I kind of followed the path to trauma. My first jobs after I went to Columbia School of Social Work, and my first jobs after that working in with survivors of domestic violence. And then I helped run a rape trauma program where I was supervising and managing the SANE and SAFER programs in Nassau County, New York.
Okay. So you must have that was when you were at Columbia. Did you stay in the New York City area for a while?
I did. I was in New York City before graduate school for a bit. I did some social work there, went to graduate school, and there were grants at the time being offered to New York City organizations for specific populations in domestic violence. So I worked with survivors of domestic violence who were also had certain disabilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've talked exactly about survivors with specific disabilities before. We've had a few guests on the show with some disabilities, but was it physical disability or other kinds of issues that they were facing back then?
Yeah, it was developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, from hearing loss to mobility issues. It ran the gamut.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And I guess out of that work, what kinds of things that must have been in the 90s?
Somewhere in like 98, 99, maybe somewhere in there. Uh-huh.
So what were you learning? I guess what kinds of things were coming, lighting up your mind? Like, oh, we need to do more of this, or wow, this is really concerning. Like, what was lighting up your brain at that time?
I was really motivated by people who didn't have a voice for vulnerable populations. And certainly folks with disabilities are more vulnerable to domestic violence and other crimes. So I was specifically motivated by women who didn't feel like they had a voice. And
Okay.
I did a lot of advocacy work in graduate school, and then at some point wanted to leave the city, and found that position running that program at the Nassau County Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Okay, great. And during, how long were you there then, doing that program?
Maybe 3 years or so, and I realized that I really couldn't do trauma work as well as I wanted to without knowing about addictions. So I started working at outpatient rehab for folks who are working toward recovery.
Okay. So yeah, I guess why did you put that together? The addictions were a causing factor or a resulting factor, or all of the
I
above?
was going to say the answer is yes to that, right? So, for folks who, especially adults who experienced violence as children, much more apt to experience substance abuse. And then for folks who are abusing substances, much more likely that they will be victims or survivors of some kind of violence. They do go hand in hand. Yeah.
So which part do you start treating, or do you do all of them at once? That might feel like if there's a to-do list and I'm dealing with all this trauma and I'm addicted to a substance as well, what did you find worked to like, which part do we start with?
I think it really depends on the individual. If we're at the place where someone may need detox, obviously starting there. But if you're talking about really getting into the nitty-gritty of recovery, it is a delicate dance. I really like to work with someone, if at all possible, right when they're inpatient, or if they're doing really in-depth outpatient work. And I always want to know where they're at in their recovery, both on the timeline and how much of the foundation they feel like they have, because it is a dance kind of between wanting to stay clean and sober and working on the trauma that may be activating something that might trigger you to use. So if the trauma is the thing or part of the things that are triggering you to use, you want to work on the trauma a little bit, but not to the extent that that's going to be so activating that you might seek relief through the substances you're trying to avoid.
Okay. Wow. That sounds really challenging.
It can be sometimes. Yeah, it is a delicate dance. And if you keep the lines of communication open, and you have that availability, and that person really has a good foundation, it's really doable and very transformative. I did work with one woman who, at her first attempt at inpatient, didn't want to do some of the trauma work. She ended up back at inpatient and was ready to do it, and since then has been clean and sober. I think maybe 7 years.
Wow, what a success story!
Yeah. It really makes a difference.
Yeah, I guess my question to follow up on her would be, in addition to getting in that different place of healing, were there other things that she was doing that helped keep her strong and on that path? Like, did she develop any new habits or like change other practices along the way?
Absolutely. I think, one of the in addition to really processing the trauma that had been ruling her life, I think that was the number one thing, to be honest. But there were other things as well. I think, as we kind of know, connection is really the antidote to addiction. And so she created a community where she had connection and emotional intimacy and things she loved to do, whether it be kayaking or hiking or being with her animals.
See that? I think that's what's really helpful. Tammy is here. I mean, each of our guests usually offers a different perspective, and we've heard a lot about connectivity or community, but also like nature, and kayaking is out of doors, and I think there's so much important healing that happens when we are just breathing and taking our mind away from the trauma into I think, open space.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And
Yeah.
the work that I do with EMDR, and it's kind of that IFS infused EMDR, does that as well. I'm not saying it's
Oh,
a replacement, but there is that. What happens is you have more access to self and self energy, and so there's more space for play and joy and connection to self, to connection to everything else, and connection to others.
that's awesome. Yeah, let's talk about this. The thing I can't pronounce, the EMDR. I guess now I'm so glad I never read the whole thing out. I keep saying EMDR, and all I knew was eyes. But now that makes really good sense. So I guess you must have done this yourself, and you're studying these different types of therapies, and it sounds like you melded them together.
Yeah, through the years, I was really focused on the EMDR protocol, and I realized that there were parts of people showing up, and so sometimes I would also do some parts work and inner child work. At the time, it was more called. And then
wait, let's define that, because I don't think everybody knows what parts work means.
Right. So, many years ago, as I was doing EMDR, I realized that different parts were showing up for people. So, let's say, as I live my life, there's this part that's kind of like a sabotaging part that gets in the way of me being as successful as I want in a lot of ways. And for me, that part was this 16-year-old. And a 16-year-old and a 35-year-old or a 45-year-old's life doesn't really work so well. So in the parts work, we focus on that 16-year-old, let's say, or inner child work. We focus on that younger part and really hearing and listening to what her story is, what she needs us to know, and what she needs from us. And through that, profound healing can really happen.
But I think, just to make sure we're on the same page, you said her, but you're really saying like your own self when you were 16. Like if I'm doing this quote parts work, it's when I was 16, these were things going on, and I'm still dealing with them now.
Yes. Right.
Is that what it means?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. That's helpful.
I wasn't sure. Like you said, there's this 16-year-old showing up. I'm like, oh, is that my child? Like I have 17-year-olds.
Right.
I have twins who are 17. Maybe one of them is showing up.
Right.
And sometimes they are the problem.
Absolutely.
So it's like, oh yeah, that's a total. I can't get rid of them now.
No. And just like you can't get rid of your own children, we don't want to get rid of those younger parts of us.
Gotcha.
Right. We just want to heal her.
Right. Sorry. I was like imagining this child showing up at my door.
Thank you for that.
That's the way you described it. But now it's making sense. So stuff that we were dealing with in our past existence, earlier years in our lives, shows up. So what can you give me an example? Like, so if what would be showing up? Like I had an eating disorder at 16, or I had this abusive boyfriend, or like, what do you mean? Stuff like that?
Well, maybe you come to see me because you're in a new relationship and you're noticing that you're sabotaging it because every time he or she gets close to you, you panic and you do something to push him away. So we get really curious about what that...
Subconsciously or deliberately? I
think both.
Okay.
So you're noticing the pattern, even though you don't want that to be happening, you keep doing it.
Okay.
And part of it's conscious, part of it may not be conscious.
Gotcha.
But by getting curious about what's happening and what's showing up for you there, you can work with that part that keeps showing up. And as you get close to that part, you can have a conversation with that part and it can tell you the story. It may be that part was the one that was acting out at 13 with an eating disorder or was trying to self-soothe with an eating disorder. Maybe it was something else. But the past shows up in the present through those patterns and through those symptoms. And when we identify the patterns or we feel a symptom and we see those as invitations to heal or invitations to be curious or invitations to be loving, then we can transform what's underneath that.
Okay, so can you explain that more? That sounds really awesome, but complicated. So how does that work? Like, what does that look like?
So if you and I were working together, and this is also work that you can do outside of therapy, but to really understand it, maybe to have a guide in a session would be more helpful. There's also, I suppose there's podcasts and books to help guide you as well, but really having that mentor, that guide is really helpful. So how does it work? So you'd come into therapy and say, hey, I've been noticing these patterns. I really don't want this to happen anymore. I know that it's not just this relationship, but if I try and get into another relationship, it'll happen again. And I'm really suffering here with this because I really want a partner, but I know I'm going to push always, anyone that gets close away. And so I would say, well, you notice the pattern, and what comes up for you when you think about that pattern? What's happening in your body and what emotions are coming up? So you might say, well, I notice a tightness in my chest and some anxiety, and I get really fearful. So I would ask you to focus on the fear and the sensations in your body, and ask if those parts or those sensations can tell you anything about their story or what they want you or need you to know. And we may add some bilateral stimulation to that, like you talked about with EMDR. Back in the day, it was just eye movements back and forth was the bilateral stimulation. But we might just add it here as a tapping, like a butterfly tap on one shoulder and then the next.
And talking about, what was going on in your body during the tapping?
Yes. And okay. and that oftentimes leads to stories from the past. So, for example, with this pattern we're talking about, perhaps as you're tapping and you're noticing sensations in your body, those sensations and those emotions are going to bring you back to other times where you felt that. And so you may say, oh, geez, when I was 8, my mother was screaming at me. My dad was nowhere to be found. I think he was drunk, whatever the story is. And so then we might work with that younger part, which is also you, but that 8-year-old younger part of you, and really hear her story and give her what she needs. Also adding the bilateral stimulation.
Wow, it sounds magical. So I guess that's what your practice does. But that's combining. But I think when I read it, what's the internal family systems part?
That's the parts work that I'm talking about.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Years ago it was called parts work or inner child work, and I kind of added that into the EMDR. And more recently, Dick Schwartz developed internal family systems therapy, which has become a lot more popular. And so I think the short language for the parts work that I do is more informed now by a lot of his work.
Okay, gotcha, Tammy. And then I guess, since our listeners are predominantly dealing with sexual abuse and trauma related to that sexual violence experience, what specifically, that sounds, to me, it's always more complicated because it's not just like, it could be screaming, but it's such an intimate part of you and also involves another person violating that, very private part of your body or more than one part, perhaps. So is there anything specifically that seems to work well when it's sexual trauma that, we're working through with the modalities you're talking about?
Yeah, I think if the presenting issue is sexual trauma, and that's what's kind of driving your bus, or that's what's keeping you up at night, if that's what's contributing to your anxiety, and contributing to your difficulty in intimate relationships, we go right for the sexual trauma. And I'd specifically go right in with EMDR. So we'd look at that incident, or many, if it was childhood sexual abuse that went on for a while. And we look at one incident and add bilateral stimulation to that, along with the thoughts of that moment, the emotions that come up, and the sensations in your body. And by adding bilateral stimulation, we're effectively doing what REM sleep does, which is consolidate memories and process emotions. And when we're able to do that, we can put that trauma specifically in the past, which is no longer present, which is no longer really traumatic anymore. So you could think of that, instance or that assault or that trauma as something that happened, but you no longer have activation in your body. You can say, yeah, that was really horrible. I remember that was horrible, but I'm not feeling that as horrible in this moment right now. It can go even further too. One woman I was working with, we processed the trauma, no longer alive in her body. And then at one point, and I mentioned this in my TEDx talk, but at one point she pushes him off of her as she's going through this session with me, bilateral stimulation. She comes out of it and says, I pushed him off of me and I ran out of the apartment. And I could see the trauma literally leaving her body because she became animated and she was sitting upright and she was just more alive. And what's really fascinating about that moment and what happened later on, we could realize is that in her nervous system, in her biology, in her body, that never happened. She knows it happened for sure. It doesn't get rid of that, but it got rid of it as a traumatic experience in her body.
So just to make sure I understand, Tammy, what you described was she in this tapping zone had reimagined the assault, and this time she ran him out of the room.
She ran herself out of the room. Yes.
Ran herself out of the room in her mind. Right.
Yeah.
So was that just a sensation she went through, and it was like almost like as if it happened, like a really big dream, like a dream that stuck.
Right. I think I'm trying to think of it differently in that way, as a dream that stuck.
Right. Like you didn't forget it. You lived it. It was almost like a stage play.
Right. If you think of your nervous system as a computer that gets programmed and reprogrammed or deleted, I think we effectively deleted that experience from her nervous system, even though she has the cognitive memory of it. It's not alive in her body anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool.
I'm thinking of what about, so some people, I'm thinking of all the different things that happen when you are traumatized. Like some people get really anxious and they have that flight, or some people have fight, like if they get triggered, they lose their temper immediately, or they immediately get anxious. So can it work on almost any kind of impact of the trauma? Like if you say, okay, I don't want to lose my temper every time and get in my head about something, it works. This is amazing. It can work on those things too.
Yes, it can. So maybe if the reactivity you're describing is related to a specific trauma, yes, that will decrease as well. And you can also add the parts work. So the part that immediately gets activated and you start screaming, we get really curious about that part. And what do you feel in your body when you're activated? What are the emotions that come up around that? And then have that part tell the story.
Amazing.
I know.
Tammy,
and what happens is like this, this really interesting thing happens where you think that if you get close to it, it's going to get stronger. If you get curious about it, you know more about it, it's going to be more present. It has the opposite effect. Just by getting curious, just by asking this part questions, you start to feel some disentangling from that part a little bit, and more access to the self that can help make decisions, that has the ability to be more flexible and less reactive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And now I'm thinking of something else. Like, do you need to, it feels like then I'm worried, like you get fixed and then it's like exercise. You got to keep doing it, or you know what I mean? Like, do you lose this? Like, can it wear off the magic?
I
Like,
love that question.
It only lasts like 3 months, and then you got to get another fix.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, how does it work?
Yeah, no, that's highly unusual. I think I just spoke with someone this week, and I got curious about what happened there. You know, that we had done this piece of work, and then there was some backslide and activation around some triggers. But that it's so rare that once something has been processed, it's processed. Once you have worked with a part, really gotten to know it and disentangled yourself from it. You may want to stay in touch with it from time to time. Maybe when that rage comes up, you say hello to the part, see what that part needs. But you'll have more access to being able to regulate it. You'll notice when it's coming up. It's not just a quick flooding in an instant.
Yeah, it just seems like, to me, when I think about trauma, it's so hard. It feels like so hard to rewire our systems. And what you're describing is that it's possible with this, like, bilateral stimulation and some of like the deeper work, and really like sitting center in the fire, almost like center in the memory and in the situation. Yeah.
I'm not going to say that this is an easy process or an easy transformation or solution in any way. It can be. It goes very deep and very fast. So, I mean, some people are like, I just want to do this. I need to get through this. Let's just go in. And others say, no, I want to dip my toe in. I really want to regulate this a little bit. I want to do this gently. So it really depends on what you're able to tolerate, how you want to approach it. And I think, to your point, when someone is really dealing with complex PTSD or CPTSD versus, say, a one-off trauma, that's different. You know, CPTSD, relational trauma, those will take a little longer for sure. If it was, a car accident, a plane accident, witnessing a shooting or something like that, without a history of childhood trauma, that's a lot easier or simpler.
Gotcha. And so, when I read the intro, it was, you said weeks or months instead of years. And is the pace of doing the work like how long is a session with like when you do this work? Do they see you twice a week? Is it every day? What does that part look like, the actual operation? Yeah. Like if somebody's listening to us and they're like, oh my gosh, I live in Massachusetts, I can go find Tammy. Yeah. Or can you do it on Zoom too? I guess that's a question. I guess like, how do they, what does the process look like?
So for most people, it's virtual. For a lot of people, it's also in person. My practice is fully virtual at this point. I was probably half and half before the pandemic. It is very feasible online. And then it's also very individual depending on how often, how long you want to do it. I do have people, one person flew in from Texas, stayed in an Airbnb and did the work, over the course of many days. Other people say, I want to do 50 minutes once a week, or even like 3 weeks or 4 weeks apart, because I really want to process in between sessions. So, I mean, some people will say, and I've said this before, if you want to get your tires changed, you don't want to go every week to get one tire changed for 4 weeks. On the other hand, if what your nervous system can tolerate is one tire a week, we'll do one tire a week.
That's great. That's flexible like that, and it still can be effective. Yeah. Because I think people get like something that stymies a lot of people from getting started is just like, how am I ever going to fit this into my life? I know the trauma is really bad, and what I'm going through is taking forever, and I feel like I'm slipping backwards a lot. But I think if knowing that this process can be effective and work around whatever an individual needs is fantastic. And what about age group or gender or anything else? Does it work? We obviously have teenagers being assaulted in high school. or, we have somebody who might be a grandmother now, and is going back to saying, I'm ready to deal with this. Like, my partner's deceased and I have all this time and space and I really want to do this work. What does it look like for age and gender?
It works for all ages and genders. EMDR has been developed for children as well. And I run EMDR retreats frequently, and I have folks from no teenagers yet, but folks in their 20s through their 70s. Like I said, it's really individualized and is just as effective on a recent trauma or a trauma that was decades ago.
That's good.
Yeah. I think really the message is, and why I do this most importantly, is that I want people to know that relief can be really short term. It doesn't have to be something that you do for years, and that takes a really long time to have some kind of relief from the burdens and the symptoms that you're carrying. That even after 1 to 3 sessions, there's significant change with EMDR.
That's so exciting.
I know. I want everyone to know.
Unusual thing.
Yeah.
It's not preventative medicine, but it's definitely a really exciting idea to think that I can really tackle this. That's bringing me so much agony and anxiety and stress. So
yeah, I think in some ways it can be preventative too. If I have a childhood history of trauma, if I process that sooner rather than later, it's less likely that I will be the survivor or victim of a trauma later on. So, and in that way, it can be.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think of anything else we should know about your work or what you're doing. Do you? I know you do a lot of speaking. Where are you speaking mostly at conferences to other practitioners, or what is that about?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of applying for conferences. I don't have anything on the books yet. I did a TEDx talk in October that was supposed to be out last week, but it should be out momentarily. I've been waiting for that. And do a lot of podcasts to really get the word out. I really want people to get the relief that they need and not suffer another minute or another day if they don't have to. And as of last year, I started running these EMDR retreats that have been wildly successful. I'm really excited about as well.
And so they're in person?
Yes, those are in person. We've started just kind of in the New York, Massachusetts, tri-state area, and we're expanding in the coming years.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to learn more. And where can our listeners learn more about on your website or to find out more?
Yeah, the website is a great place to reach me at www.tammyvalicenti.com. And my number's there. You can text, email me, or call me.
Thank you for being so accessible, Tammy. It's really a joy to hear about the work you're doing. And it definitely sounds like it's helping so many. It's too bad you can't clone yourself and have like 10 of you all over.
I have said that. And, I've started working in groups as well to help that process, to reach as many folks as I can. And it doesn't have to be with me. Just reach out to anyone who you think might be helpful with EMDR. There's on psychologytoday.com, you can sort for EMDR therapy.
That is perfect. Well, It's a pleasure to learn more about the work you're doing and how effective it is and accessible it is as well. So thank you so much for being a guest and sharing this critical information. And I know we'll put in the show notes, your website and more information, and hopefully your TEDx talk will be out as well. And we can, I thought you said you have one, or you have two now?
No, it was one. It was one from October, but it just hasn't been published yet.
Yeah, they sometimes delay, but it's all good. It's all great work. And thank you for all that you've done with your career to help survivors. I mean, obviously, have more forms of trauma than just sexual violence, but I think like we started out, so many of our listeners have been through other kinds of trauma beyond just sexual violence. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for paving the way.
Absolutely. And and for all of our listeners, again, just take each and every one of our episodes and take notes. I encourage you to journal along. try something, find a supportive person who you can do this great work with, like Tammy. And until the next time, together we are definitely thriving, and you are never alone as a survivor.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Dear Katie. These conversations are never easy, but they're always necessary, and we're so grateful you chose to share this space with us. If something in today's episode stirred something within you, please give yourself what you need. Whether that's rest, support, or just a deep breath, you're not alone. To hear more stories, resources, and survivor-centered conversations, be sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We want to hear from you, so please leave us a review and share your feedback. Your thoughts help us create episodes that resonate with listeners. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.